I'll call this meeting of City Council on June 17th, 2024 to order. I note that Mayor Clark is appearing online. If I could just confirm that she can hear us. We don't see you. So
I can hear you. Thank you.
okay, thank you very much. I'll check in with you on any vote before we finalize the voting. So I wanted to start by sharing our City of Medicine land acknowledgement, and I have a few extra words to add to it today because it is National Indigenous Month, and on Friday is National Indigenous Peoples Day. So we're going to have a presentation about it today, but I'll first share the land acknowledgement of the city and then add a few things personally about the land acknowledgement. So the City of Medicine Hat acknowledges that we live and work on treaty territory. The city pays respect to all Indigenous peoples and honors their past, present, and future. We recognize and respect their cultural heritages and relationships to the land. What I wanted to add in my own acknowledgement is that I'm thinking today of the thousands of years of self-governance of our Indigenous peoples and celebrating their history of that, sitting in a circle much like we are doing today, or at least a half circle, talking about how to support and protect their communities, how to keep a connection with their land and the creatures in and around them, and to follow their own principles of justice, including restorative justice that ties their community together. So I wanted to acknowledge personally not only their history and culture, but also wish when we move forward to incorporate those values into our own governance. Now we have a moment for either reflection or prayer. All right, thank you for that. We have next on our agenda is the adoption of the previous council meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2024. Those were in our packages. Are there any objections or corrections to the minutes? Councillor Van Dyke?
Yes, thank you. A very small correction on page 5. Under council announcements, it should read Pride Month, not Pride Week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Van Dyke. I think that's just a small typographical amendment, so it doesn't change the core of what was said. So hearing no objections to the adoption of the previous council minutes, council adopts the minutes of the June 3rd, 2024 regular council meeting as presented with that small amendment. And now we move to adoption of the agenda. Any additions suggested to the agenda at this point? All right, hearing no objections to that, council adopts the agenda for this June 17th, 2024 regular council meeting as presented. The next on our agenda are councillor announcements. Are there any councillors with an announcement this month or this meeting? Councillor Sharps, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, just wanted to share something from FCM last week, which was the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. It was a pretty intense, and for those of you know that don't know what that is, it's where all the municipal leaders across Canada go to Calgary, and there's resolutions that we're dealing with and bylaws, and federal ministers were there. Prime Minister Trudeau showed up. All the leaders were there. It was very informative, not always agreed, obviously, but what was really interesting, one of the resolutions that came forward was incredibly impactful. There must have been, so what happens when they do a resolution, the room is split and there's 4 sets of microphones, and yes, if you want to speak towards something or if you want to speak against something, you're on the right or the left. And it's usually a pretty standard line. And what was really interesting, before we got to this resolution, I think Councillor McGrogan might have walked in at the same time we were listening. There must have been 30 points of order. And I tell you, it was mind-blowing. I think we do an awesome job because they pointed order everything. But anyways, there was only 4 resolutions that they sent up to the feds, and this is big, and I'm going to share it because it it was emotional for all the parties in the room. The lineup for supporting the resolution must have been, I'm going to say 30 deep, City Manager. It was intense. So some people aren't going to like this, but I'm going to share it with, because I haven't had a chance to share it with council yet, and it is the harassment of elected officials. And I'm going to read the resolution to you in short. Whereas all elected officials have an ability to show leadership on this issue by modeling behavior and should always strive to elevate, debate, embrace differences of opinion, disagree respectfully, and focus on issues of policy and substance. Now therefore be it that the federal government work with provinces, territories, and municipalities, including through FCM, to identify and implement measures to protect elected municipal officials, their family members, as well as municipal staff, especially women, members of Black and racialized communities, and 2SLGBTQIA+ individuals, and we added Indigenous, from harassment, intimidation, and threats, thereby reinforcing a unified front to safeguard democracy, and be it further resolved that FCM calls on all elected officials of all orders of government to lead by example, demonstrating civility and respect for their local counterparts. So it was an incredibly impactful moment. I think the vote was unanimous, 90, did you see? Okay. Anyways, I wanted to share that with you because it looks like sometimes I know I hear from, people in the community and everything that's happening. This is the only place this is happening, and it's not. And but the one thing is, no matter what happens, the civility towards each other around this table has to be there. So anyways, I want to share that with and it was a great conference, very long days, unfortunately. I think the first meeting was always around 7 a.m. and they ended about 10 p.m. So they're very long, they're very informative, great interaction with different municipalities. We got to meet with some of the officials from Quebec, lots of networking right across the country. It's a phenomenal event, and you really get to speak to other people, our peers, city managers, administrators, and like I said, we had the Prime Minister in the room. So very proud of Alberta for not booing. They did really well. So.
Thank you, Councillor Sharps, and thanks for attending the meeting. I think City Manager Mitch was there, if I'm not mistaken. Mayor Clark attended FCM as well. And Councillor McGrogan, sorry, Councillor McGrogan, I didn't know that you went. I didn't mean to leave you out. So I'm glad you all had the experience, and thank you for sharing that information. Any other councillor announcements? I just had one, actually, and it comes out of a meeting that we had this month at Public Services Committee. So first of all, happy belated Father's Day to all the fathers sitting around the table and out into the audience. But it did sort of trigger in my mind that it is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And it's very important that we acknowledge that and talk about it and talk about mental health, and particularly in our community who's had feels like, based on our size, a disproportionate impact of men's mental health and a lot of grief and sadness associated with it. So we did at Public Services have a great conversation about all of the things that were going on. I'm not acting manager, director, but I was like, please don't make me recite them all. But we did have a great conversation of ways to acknowledge that, and different programs that are available, both from the Women's Shelter, Medicine at Family Service, the Viner Center, our collective journey. So there was a number of places that if you're not okay, it's okay to say that and you can reach out. So I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted that. So I hadn't mentioned it, I believe, in my last time I tried to do a councillor announcement, so I wanted to highlight it here. All right. Moving on, we have our consent agenda, I believe, is our next topic. Would anyone like to pull any items? We only had the 2 council committee meeting for the whole minutes in it, so there's not a lot to pull from, but does anyone have any interest in pulling something for further discussion? Would anyone be interested in moving that we adopt this consent agenda?
I move that council adopt the consent agenda items as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Hyder. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Sharps. And so we shall vote. And Mayor Clark, I'll just ask you, when our votes are registered, if you could tell us verbally what your vote is, although you could certainly go first if you want as well.
I vote yes.
Sorry. Sorry, Mayor Clark, I only heard you say I vote. I didn't hear what the word was, yes or no.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Might have been my old ears here, so thank you very much. All right, so moving on to some unfinished business from previous meetings, bylaw number 4814, to amend the Transportation of Dangerous Goods bylaw. The sponsor is Development and Infrastructure Committee. I'll turn it over to you, City Manager Mitchell, to introduce the topic and introduce anyone you'd like us to hear from today.
Thank you. Through the chair, just wanted some clarity because I was not here for the last meeting. I will turn it over to Acting Manager Garland.
Thank you, City Manager Mitchell. Acting Managing Director Garland, welcome. We're interested to hear from you.
Thank you. Through the chair, the bylaw amendment tonight is related to the Alberta Dangerous Goods Transportation and the Handling Act requirements from provincial ministerial approval of the municipality TDG bylaw, and it's mandated to be done every 5 years. This is to ensure the changes in legislation and industry standards are captured in our TDG bylaw, along with any other updates to our dangerous routes. The current bylaw was originally adopted in 1995 and periodically amended. The most recent bylaw was approved in July of 2019, and this year, the city completed a review of the existing bylaw and determined that it's functioning well. No major changes to the routes were warranted, other than adding a couple permitted loading and unloading zones, both related to gas stations. In addition, the amending bylaw includes updates coming out of the latest provincial act, including wording edits and addition of colored placard imaging. I have Director Nowakowski as well as Manager Parikh here to speak to any questions.
All right, thank you very much. And this bylaw, just so I'm confirming, Madam Clerk, has had first reading? It's here for second and third reading, is that correct? Okay. So any questions or discussion at this time? No opinions, but any questions or discussion we can hear? All right, seeing none, thank you all for coming. Is there anyone who wishes to make a motion in this regard about this bylaw?
Yes, I move that council give second reading to bylaw 4814.
Thank you very much.
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sharps and McGrogan. Any discussion at this point? Any concerns? Opinions? Feel free to share them. No? All right, well, let's vote then.
I vote yes.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. We heard that loud and clear. Thank you. All right, and that passes unanimously.
I would like to move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw 4814 to amend the Transportation of Dangerous Goods bylaw.
Second.
Thank you again, Councillor Sharps and McGrogan. Any other commentary? Seeing none, let's vote.
I vote yes.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Everyone has joined you and voted yes, so that bylaw passes. And thank you very much for being willing to answer questions, gentlemen. And thank you, Acting Managing Director Garland, for your introduction. So moving on to new business, we have a National Indigenous Peoples Day presentation, sponsor being Public Services. And I understand that our Acting Director, well, there he is, of Community Development is doing the presentation, but I'll turn it over to you, City Manager Mitchell, for any introduction you wish to make.
Thank you. And through the chair, we did have a quick discussion about this administratively, and we're really excited to have Aaron here to give the presentation and background on National Indigenous Day, which falls, as Chair Robbins said, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Robbins, you've got a lot, on the 21st, which is Friday. So this is very timely, and I'd like to introduce Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm humbled to be here today to make this presentation to council, mayor, folks in the gallery, and folks online. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the work of our community inclusion coordinator, Ali Ladine, who's prepared much of this work. but unfortunately is unable to be here this evening, so I will be presenting. What I'll do is I'll talk about 4 things this evening. I'll talk about the importance of National Indigenous Peoples Day. I'll talk about our community context. We'll give an example of how we as a city are walking the path of reconciliation, and I will talk a little bit about a couple of upcoming events. Before I do that, I just want to offer a couple thoughts to frame my presentation. So one is from Paulette Fox, who's a traditional knowledge keeper from the Blood tribe. And it's I'll paraphrase her thought, but it's sometimes we have fear of breaking protocol or disturbing ceremony or getting it wrong. She said that kind of fear was a good thing. It's called respect. So respect for the people, respect for the culture, and respect for the traditions. So sometimes if we're feeling that fear, if you put it through the lens, you can think of it as respect, and it's easier to move forward. And then in terms of moving forward, in terms of walking that path of reconciliation, it is more commendable to tread the path with an open heart, embracing the possibility of fear or errors, than to avoid that path altogether. So let's walk down that path a little bit. Here's fear. So a little bit of the history of Indigenous History Month and National Indigenous Peoples Day. So Indigenous History Month was declared in 2009, and its purpose is to recognize and celebrate the history, heritage, diversity of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples in Canada. National Indigenous Peoples Day, celebrated on June 21st, which is an auspicious day for all of us, being the summer solstice, was established in 1996 by Governor General of Canada, Romeo LeBlanc. And it is important that this was done in consultation and support from many, many Indigenous communities. So let's talk a little bit about our community context of Medicine Hat. We are in the traditional territory of the Siksika, the Kainai, Piikani, Stoney Nakoda, and Tsuut'ina, as well as the Cree, Sioux, and Métis nations within Region 3, and the Saulteaux bands of the Ojibwe people. Saratoga Park, located in the heart of our community, has been an important Métis settlement since the very beginnings of Medicine Hat. And I think it's important to note that some of our first settlers in Medicine Hat were of Métis descent. We also have the privilege to live, work, and play on 2 distinct treaty territories, and that's Treaty 7 and Treaty 4. And that's quite rare for a municipality of this size to inhabit 2 treaties, and that what that does is it illustrates the diversity of the people that have been inhabiting this area for many, many, many years. I also want to talk about the idea of Indigenous multiculturalism. This refers to the recognition and celebration of diverse cultural traditions and within Indigenous and Aboriginal communities. It acknowledges the coexistence of various cultural practices, languages, and customs among Indigenous people. So what's really important to note is Medicine Hat has Indigenous people from all across Canada, and they bring their language, their culture, and their ways of knowing to enrich our community and make it the rich tapestry that it is. So we can say Medicine Hat is Indigenous, and as we all walk into this gallery today, we walk past this permanent illustration of the illustration of Samus, of the Medicine Hat. So we have our name. Also, we have archaeological record of this area being inhabited for over 10,000 years, if not Medicine Hat, easily around Medicine Hat. So I just want to pause and think what that means. So think of 8,000 years ago on a summer day in the prairies, or think of 600 years ago in the Samus archaeological area, and people have been living, working, and playing here that entire time. So we are but one step in that 10,000 years on a very, very long journey. Samus teepee, which is one of our largest, I would say, symbols in our community of indigeneity. It is no coincidence that it is situated on Highway 1, which is the ribbon that connects our entire country from coast to coast. And it sits on the precipice of the Samus archaeological site, which is 36 hectares, one of the largest archaeological sites in Alberta. and it's been continuously inhabited from the mid-1300s through to the mid-1840s. So again, a rich cultural heritage, again, situated in the heart of our city. Our city flag celebrates, I'm looking at our city flag right now, celebrates our Indigenous heritage. And then, of course, our proximity to the Cypress Hills, which has its own rich Indigenous history. So in terms of walking the path of reconciliation, I will just illustrate one aspect of what we, the city, are doing. So the City of Medicine Hat, the Mawassan Friendship Center, and the University of Alberta are actively working together to rebury the remains and associated burial artifacts of 3 ancestors held in public trust at the University of Alberta. The request to rebury these ancestors came from Medicine Hat resident in 2017, so this has been a relatively long process. The remains of these 3 ancestors are held at the University of Alberta since 1967, when they were disinterred from our community and moved to the university. While the ancestors have been cared for at the University of Alberta, the rightful place is to be at peace within their community. The Medicine Hat Ancestor Reburial Project team is committed to the reburial of these ancestors in a respectful manner, following the wishes and requests of the communities involved. So this process started in March 2023, and it has engaged communities, individual and groups across Alberta and southern Saskatchewan. Oh, thank you, Dennis. To learn more about the appropriate reinterment practices that would work, that would be respectful for these ancestors. This has been a journey of learning, listening, trust building, and relationship building. It is expected that the ancestors will be laid to rest in the fall of 2024. I would now like to just talk about a couple of events that are coming up near the end of the week here. So to celebrate National Indigenous Peoples Day, please join us at City Hall between 2 and 4 in the Helen Benny Lounge. Of course, that's Friday the 21st, to receive a blessing from Kainai Elder Charlie Fox and hear the City of Medicine Hat Mayor Lindsay Clark talk about what the city is, how the city is working to celebrate indigeneity. And those of you that have had the pleasure to do a smudging and a blessing from Elder Fox, he's an incredibly generous and wonderful man, and it is a great experience. And if that doesn't entice you to the event, we're having Bannock as well. So so that's on Friday. So we're going to call that reconciliation. On Saturday, we're going to do some reconciliation, and that's the indigenization of Town Square. So please come to Town Square on Saturday between 12 and 4. Again, Elder Charlie Fox will be there. I'm going to say in somewhat less formal capacity at that point. So we're having a program that is called Ask an Elder. So you will be able to approach Elder Charlie Fox and ask him some of these questions. So I did begin this about talking about fear. Some of us may have fear of asking some of those questions. What is the proper protocol when you approach an elder? Why do we offer that much tobacco to elders? Those are good questions, and he would be able to answer those questions at that point. So this is a real opportunity for our community to do a bit of learning and to turn their fear into respect, and then in turn turn that into curiosity. So that happens again on Saturday between 12 and 4. That'll conclude my presentation, but I would certainly welcome any questions, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions or comments? Yep. Councillor Hyder buzzed in first.
Sure. I just actually, through the chair, had one question, and that's on with Treaty 7 and Treaty 4. We have both of them here. Where, do you know where that jurisdiction is and what encompasses what area?
Through the chair, that is an excellent question that my wife just asked me this afternoon. I do not know. The river is a portion of that boundary. So on the other side, on the east side of the river is Treaty 4. But that line doesn't follow the river all the time. I think it goes straight north in there. So portions of our community do reside on Treaty 4.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hyder.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a thank you to Aaron and the presentation and your enthusiasm for our community cultural events. It's well recognized. So thanks, Aaron.
I'm just going to say you had me at Bannock. I grew up in Grand Prairie, and if I'd grown up in New York, I guess taste of a bagel might bring me home, but Bannock is what does it for me. So I've, got kids going lots of different directions, but they've been learning a lot in school about Indigenous history, and the opportunity to take them to Town Square and ask an elder a question would be really thrilling for them, and they'd be excited, and they would show no fear, I'm sure, which is how we want our children to be when they interact with our Indigenous family, I'm going to say. That's how I feel about them. So thank you very much for your presentation and for enacting Town Square in a way that celebrates Indigenous history. I look forward to it. And the ribbon fashion show sounds fantastic. Also something I look forward to. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to our 10.2 on our agenda, which is, sorry, Mayor Clark didn't want to say, the speaker list was up. Mayor Clark, you didn't want to add anything? I didn't see your hand when the presentation was on, but it's kind of hard to see.
Thank
Okay. Just
you,
chime,
no.
yeah, chime in at the end if I've missed you. It's a bit hard to see from here. As you know, it's hard to see from here. Okay, so our next is bylaw 4825 to revise the sewer bylaw, sponsored by Development and Infrastructure. So once again, City Manager, I'll turn it over to you to introduce and see if there's anyone you want to provide extra information to council.
Thank you, and through the chair, this is a standard housekeeping matter on the bylaw, and I will turn it over to Acting Managing Director Garland. Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair. Sorry, I'm fighting the cold a little last while too. Administration is bringing forward a revising bylaw to revise bylaw 475, which was passed by council in 2023. One of the purposes of bylaw 4715 was to take provisions dealing with rates and charges from the body of the bylaw and move those provisions into a schedule. In moving those provisions from the body to the schedule, one portion was inadvertently missed, and the intention of revising the bylaw tonight is to replace the missing provision. I'll also point out the fact the error was an oversight is demonstrated by the fact the city did not change any of its charging practices, and the city is charged for the affected services in the same way as it did before the amendment. So the purpose of the revision is to correct this oversight and to make it more clear the intention of bylaw 4715. So I have Manager Dickey here, as well as Acting City Solicitor Clausen, if there's any further questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions around the table? Seeing none, I wonder if I could entertain a motion about this matter.
You can, although I was really surprised Manager Dickey does not want to give us a presentation on sewer, so. I move the council gives first reading to bylaw 4825 to revise the sewer bylaw.
Second.
Thank you again, Councillor Sharps and McGrogan. All right. Any clarification at this point to what's within the bylaw itself? If not, we can vote. And Mayor Clark, what's your vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
I move that council gives second reading to bylaw 4825, known as the sewer bylaw.
Second.
Thank you again. Any discussion? Doesn't seem like there's any. So once again, we could move to vote.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mayor Clark. That's noted.
I move that council unanimously consents to having third reading to bylaw 4825 at this meeting.
Second.
Thank you again. Any discussion of this motion? Seeing none, we'll vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. That does pass unanimously, so if there's another motion, we certainly could entertain it.
I move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw 4825 to revise the sewer bylaw.
And I'll second.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Clark, my mic wasn't on.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so
Yes.
much. So that, that bylaw passes, that bylaw being 4825. Thank you for the presentation and the work to bring this forward to make those corrections. And thank you, Mr. Clausen. Sorry, I wasn't ignoring you there. Thank you for being online in case we had questions. And Mr. Dickey as well. All right, moving on to item number 11, Council Code of Conduct follow-up. This is committee business. The sponsor is Administrative and Legislative Review Committee. And City Manager Mitchell, if you wouldn't mind providing an introduction and any information you think we should consider before deliberating.
Thank you, and through the chair, I will perhaps turn it over to Chair McGrogan as he was at the meeting. But this has been something that has been before council. As you know, we did have a presentation by an integrity commissioner and that model was looked at. This comprehensive bylaw looks at incorporating that model and some of the changes that were made at the request of council. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Chair McGrogan to add anything additional.
Thank you. Through the chair, just, it's explanatory, but I'm just going to read, I guess, the changes to the bylaw, which are obviously very important. So there was a recommendation that we go away, or that the bylaw come back to the Administrative and Leg Committee to look at several different options. And I'll just read them. So direct staff to make the following amendments to the proposed bylaw, Code of Conduct number 4805. So the points are elimination of ALR committee as an initial assessment body for council code of conduct complaints. The second one is to establish a complaint system that would see all complaints directed to an external integrity commissioner for initial assessment and investigation. And establish a process comparable to the Lethbridge model that would allow individual council members to contact the integrity commissioner for advice and direction on any matter related to the code review bylaw. Add requirements for complainants complaints comparable to Red Deer model as follows. So a complainant must either reside in Medicine Hat, own land in Medicine Hat, own a business in Medicine Hat, or work in Medicine Hat. The next point is change the coming into force date of the new bylaw to March 1st, 2025 to allow time for implementation of the Integrity Commissioner model, including without limitation the selection of an Integrity Commissioner by council, and confirm the deadline of 90 days for completion of investigations subject to the ability to extend the deadline of the Integrity Commissioner if the Integrity Commissioner determines that it is not practically possible to complete the investigation within the period. I can tell you that the discussion at committee level focused on the timelines, thinking that March 1st seemed to be a long way out. So we talked with the city solicitor about that. They're going to make every effort to get this in place, but just to be, I guess, on the safe side, that's the date that they've set. I think if we're going to anticipate some comment in relation to some of these changes, that will be it. I know there's been some community conversation about the length of time it's taken to enact this code of conduct bylaw or get it off the ground, but I think the prudent step of investigating the Integrity Commissioner model was very worthwhile. We did hear from a person that is in that role in a setting, and it was very informative, and it seems to, well, I guess I won't throw support at it right now, but it seemed like a decent model. So they are the changes that were recommended to us at the Admin and Leg Committee. And if there's no questions, should I put a motion on the floor, Madam Chair?
Sure, I was just going to see if there's any questions about what Councillor McGrogan has laid out for you.
I have a question.
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Mayor Clark.
Thank you, through the chair. With respect to the March 1st date, would it be possible, or did you guys discuss having the most of the bylaw come into force immediately when passed, except for the piece about the integrity commissioner to separately state that that provision will come into force on March 1st?
Through the chair to Mayor Clark, there was some discussion about that. I don't know if Mr. Bullock's online or if somebody could respond from the legal office in relation to that question. Thank you.
Thank you through the chair. We've got Rex Osivwimu from our office. He's been heavily involved in this project and he helped to prepare the comprehensive report. So if Rex is available, I would refer that question to him, please.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Welcome, Mr. Osivwimu.
Thank you. Through the chair to council. That discussion was had, and the city solicitor did say that subject to the directive given by the council, we can make such amends and include such clauses in the new bylaw if the council deems it fit.
Does that help answer your question, Mayor Clark?
Thank you through the chair. Yes, it does. Sorry, I'm just wondering if we would make that change to the direction now, or are we waiting for because there's no bylaw attached. I think it's expected in September. Whether it would be more appropriate to make that change when we actually see the bylaw.
Yeah, Mayor Clark, Councillor McGrogan, as chair of that committee, is going to provide some insight that hopefully helps.
Yeah, Mayor Clark, through the chair, Mayor Clark, thank you for that, and I think that is the intention. What the legal department is looking for now is I guess the nod to go ahead and make these amendments and then bring the bylaw back to council for the readings that are necessary to put it in force. Have I got that right? I think, Rex?
The chair, that's correct.
Okay, does that answer the question for you, Madam Mayor?
Yes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I happened to be at the meeting as spare. I was an ad hoc member appointed by Mayor Clark. Thank you for doing that, Mayor Clark, so we could get this matter forward. We needed quorum, and I was available to come to the meeting. There really was a lengthy discussion with City Solicitor Bullock, City Manager, so we really sort of looked at all of that timeline very closely. And City Solicitor Bullock, I don't think I'm putting words in his mouth. Mr. Clausen will tell me if I had some ideas and understood that it was the committee's desire to have that integrity commissioner in place earlier than March 1st. And what that process looks like, we still need to talk about in terms of budget and many other things going on. But that was certainly well known, I would say, by the end of the meeting, that was the intention, and the recommendation of the committee was to move that timeline up, but not in such a way that it interfered with the effective drafting and implementation of the bylaw. Is that fair, Councillor McGrogan, of what you heard in the meeting?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions about the recommendation, or? Oh, sorry. Councillor Sharps, it says right here. Go ahead.
That is, okay. I just had a couple of questions that I probably just need some clarity on. I'm probably just either overthinking it or not thinking it enough. So one of my questions was on the 90 days of acceptance. So let's say it's an ongoing event, if let's say an event continues periodically over every Friday for a month, does that 90 days, if I make a complaint on the last Friday because I've had enough of Councillor McGrogan, and does it include, because it was the same event, would it include the previous events or just that from the 90 days? Because it's technically, so when you do workplace, it's all encompassing, right? So would it be the last event? If we could get some clarity around that for anybody using this.
Sure, City Manager Mitchell, go ahead.
Before I let legal respond, I just need some clarity. can you kind of just explain, give
Yeah.
an example of the event, how it would continue?
Yeah.
Usually it's based on an incident, and that's what the complaint is
Sure,
made
except
on.
for, okay, here's an example. I come in and every council meeting, McGrogan kicks me under the table and calls me names, and I'm too introverted and shy to do anything about it. Stop it. So 4 weeks later, I finally get enough guts to do it. Do I get to count the first 3 incidents? So in a workplace situation, because you would count all of that, because it's one incident. So I just want to, I don't really need an answer now. I just want to make sure that's food for thought on the clarity of, because he sits right beside me, so those things could happen. Sorry. My next one is where it says if it is a criminal act, it'd be sent back to the complainant. I'm assuming that if it's a criminal act, would we just send it back to the complainant knowing that there's a potential criminal act and not refer to the police?
Through the chair,
Thank-
to the council. So that particular clause, we looked at it, and what it's meant to solve was the integrity commissioner will not have jurisdiction over anything that amounts to a crime. So in such a case, we have two options. We either refer it to the appropriate authorities, but we as a city should not be doing that. So we refer it back to the complainant and point the complainant in the direction they should go.
And we feel like that's the right, I know when, again, I'm going to just use my limited knowledge on workplace. When it comes to me and there's a criminal act, I actually have to refer it back to police if it's criminal and let them make, so I just want to make sure that, again, you look at someone like me who might be very introverted and shy, I might struggle with reporting that crime. So if the integrity commissioner and the city is aware that it is a potential crime, do they literally, are we comfortable saying back to the complainant? Or do we have, I just want to make sure, I'm not saying I have the answer, I don't know. I just want to make sure we've covered that onus of responsibility completely on that. Okay. Thank you. I'll question it again when the bylaw's in front of us if it's not clear. And then I did have a question with the integrity commissioner would get a report back to council no later than, or no more than 24 hours and no later than 48. And I would ask if there is a reasoning on that timeline versus coming in our package. Like, for example, we have, you know, this week we got the council meeting, we have, and then right away tomorrow we have audit. So it's quite lengthy to get all this data in sometimes, and I would hate to not give it if we would have got that on Saturday and there was an issue in front of us. So if we could just consider the logic or reasoning behind that, if it's only coming to council to review.
City Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, through the chair, and not to speak on the legal part, but it's always our intention and certainly our desire as administration to make sure that council has enough time and opportunity to review anything that's, you know, of a lengthy nature. And we are cognizant of your schedule, so when it's larger documents like something like this that council would have to seriously deliberate over, or, you know, have some thoughtful strategy around, or budget documents, we try to make sure that we're better at giving you those documents in a timely fashion. So I think the clause is in there just to meet the timelines, but you can feel comfort that we as administration will make sure you have it as early as possible.
I'd feel comfortable if we expanded that vocabulary. I think that it really ties it down to, I would just feel comfortable because that is the whole point of a bylaw, is to put these parameters in. And if we were dealing with something today and we got it on Saturday, I don't feel like I would have had time between our package and audit and everything else. I would not have got it in. I did nothing but read, right? Which is fine, but I don't want to have something in front of us that we can't give adequate time to. So just asking if administration could review it is my request. And then one more and I am done. The 90-day timeline for the integrity commissioner. So is that from acceptance of the file or 90 days from interviewing the last witness?
Through the chair to the council. The 90 days, there are two aspects to it. First is from the date that that the incident occurs. You start counting 90 days. Then the second part to it is from when they become aware that they could actually lodge a complaint, that you count 90 days. So there are kind of two separate parts to it.
So if you wouldn't mind, through the chair to city manager or to legal, whoever you want to answer this, I just need some more clarity there. So if I become aware today, for example, that I can put a complaint in, but I don't put anything in for 2 weeks, does the clock start ticking today or in 2 weeks?
It's from the period you become aware that you could put in a complaint.
How do you know that I'm aware?
That's what you have to tell us. That.
Very subjective, hey?
Yes. So.
Okay. So if I understand that correctly, I could not be aware for 7 months. Ooh. I'm not sure I like that.
The 90 days is, through the jurisdictional scan, is kind of across municipalities.
Yeah, I have read a few, and I found that they were 90 days from date of the complaint being submitted. I didn't, like, because aware becomes a totally different, I can be aware of it and not submit a complaint for a month.
Right.
But maybe I'm overthinking.
I'm going to come to you, City Manager Mitchell, but I think I'll give you an example. Let's say an email was received, but you didn't get a copy of it. When you got a copy of it, then you were made aware if there's a code of conduct violation within the email. So there are ways to identify when awareness happens and set sort of like the beginning of that timeline. City Manager Mitchell, did you want to add to any of that?
Through the chair, no, that was a great explanation. And I think just so that we can make sure that in the bylaw, Rex, that there's some clarity around that 90 days piece. Because I do agree, the way it stands right now, it's a little murky.
I'm just trying to get it unmurky so it's really clear. Thank you. I appreciate you answering all my questions.
Thank you.
I don't see anybody else on the speaker list. Certainly would entertain a motion about this item if someone was interested.
Now that Councillor Sharps has comfort, I will move that council direct staff to make the amendments to bylaw 4805 prior to the second reading as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan. Councillor Knodel. Any discussion of the motion? You people are very quiet today, so let's vote on it. Mayor Clark, how do you vote?
The motion includes, I apologize, the motion includes the March 1st date?
No, the motion was about amendments to bylaw 4805 prior to second reading. So we will, I think the intent of the motion is to get the bylaw back for second reading, discuss it, and potentially discuss a timeline either now or later. If there's a motion about specific timeline, we could address it. Or we could wait until we have the bylaw. We'll see what your other councillors wish to do on that item. Does that help, Mayor Clark?
Yes, but we're voting on it now, so yes.
Okay, thank you. So that passes unanimously. Thank you for the motion. Any further motions on this item? Sounds like we're going to wait until we see the bylaw to talk about timeline. Does that seem reasonable? Okay. That's the sense I got from all of you, so that's great. All right, moving on. Moving on. What's at the end of this list is not much. I lost my place because Councilor Grogan's motion was so lengthy. So we have now councillor member reports. Any reports to me that haven't, I think Councillor Sharp sort of started with some of the work she did this month at FCM. All right, then we can move on to adjournment. Now we have, it's noted here in our agenda, just so the public is aware, that our procedure bylaw allows me to request a motion to adjourn, but in practice, the chair has adjourned seeing no objection to the adjournment. So I'm looking around at my colleagues. I'm going to ask Mayor Clark if she has any objection to the adjournment, and if not, I will adjourn this meeting at 7:19. Oh, I'm sorry, we need a motion to go into closed.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to go into closed.
I will second that.
Well, let's do that business first then. All right, so we have Councillor Van Dyke with the motion to go into close, Councillor Hyder seconding the motion. Any discussion of the?
Councillor Knoll. I seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, that's right, you did. I was looking right at your face too. So let's vote on that motion.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mayor Clark. Just again, for public awareness, we had 2 items in closed that we didn't get finished in the time set aside as we had other discussion to have. So we'll return to those 2 items. And hearing no objection or concern with me adjourning the meeting, I will now officially do so at 7:20. And I'm going to suggest we take 10 minutes and then come back to the closed portion of the meeting, if that suits everybody. All right, thank you.